Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of the Start to Eat podcast. Before we begin, if you have any suggestions or feedback, or if you can come as a guest of the podcast, please do get in touch with me on Twitter and other social media platforms. I'm at Manoj LDS, MANOJLDS. So, and if you do like this series, please spread the word. I want to talk with more people. I want to talk on multiple different topics and also learn from all the folks that I've been talking with. And today we have very awesome three guests from Avalara Chennai, and they are going to show us the women power of Avalara. And I'll let them introduce themselves, but I'm also going to spend a little bit of time in introducing them. So one is Anita, who's our search systems and DevOps expert. Another is Rima, who's our expert on Spark and big data systems. Anything with Spark, everyone in the organization just talks to Rima. And third is Rucha, who is our ML platform and workflow systems expert. And Rucha is in my team. And if I have any doubts on how to do something with respect to training, pushing things to production for ML systems, she's the one that I reach to. So we have three awesome tech women developers here, and we are going to be talking about multiple things on the tech languages, libraries, tools, etc. that they like. What are the biggest tech challenges that they have faced? But also, we want to talk a bit about what are the challenges that women in tech face and what kind of advice these three successful women developers can give to young girls and women who are in schools and colleges so that they can get inspired from them and come into tech as well. So, welcome and thanks a lot, Anita, Rima, and Rucha. Can you start by introducing yourselves? I did my effort from what I've seen you guys work on, and please go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a bit about the work that you've been doing at Avalara. You want to start, Rima?
Yeah, hi. I'm Rima, and I work as a senior software engineer at Avalara. And I was previously working at Index for about 3.5 years. So I've mainly worked with the data platform team, and like Manoj spoke a lot in the big data engineering world. So I currently work with building distributed and automated systems, mainly for tax source content, sourcing and extraction. Yeah.
Welcome, Rima. You want to go next, Anita?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the software engineering side for almost 5.5 years now, and I work with a variety of stuff, basically starting with ops, native applications to search, and a bit of machine learning right now. So currently, I work on HS4 classification, which is harmonized system code classification. So basically, Avalara is a tax compliance company. So HS code comes into picture when a cross-border transaction occurs. So we're building models to predict HS code for each of the products based on its country of destination. So I currently work on the prediction of disk states and drives right now. So yeah.
Welcome, Anita. And Rucha, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rucha, and so even I've been in the software industry for around 5.5 years, and currently I work at Avalara Chennai in the tax code classification team. So right now we are in the process of building a tool to make the customer onboarding process quicker and easier. And as part of that, I'm currently working on building some underlying APIs and working with graph databases, search as well as classification. Yeah.
Start off with the first question. Maybe Rucha, you can start off this time. So, what is your most favorite thing about tech? It can be anything about it, right? Just working with tech, the practices that we have, or the favorite languages, libraries, tools, and so on. So we work in a lot of different areas, but I think every one of us, everyone in tech has their own sweet spot for something, right? So, what is that for you?
So what I like most about tech is, it sometimes amazes me. Like with a few lines of code, we achieve so much. We can build such intricate systems that help people in day-to-day life. That's why I like working with softwares and building softwares basically. And so my favorite language is definitely Python. because I feel that it's very easy to use. That's not my first language. I picked it up just like a couple of years back, and it's very easy to use. And with a very few lines of code, you can just like get a system up and running. And there are so many different libraries, and there's a vast community as well, which like you can get all kinds of help, and you can get all kinds of libraries, and you can almost build anything with Python very easily. So that's my favorite, and definitely the obvious choice for ML as well. So that's my favorite language. If I had to talk about my favorite Python libraries, then I think so. These are some of the libraries that you yourself introduced me to, Manoj. So first is Fast API. So Fast API is something. I mean, if you have to build like a web API, then almost all the things, all the different aspects that you need to take care of, like data validation or documentation or I mean, all the standards that it should satisfy. So all those things are automatically taken care of Fast API with the help of another small, like a very simple library called Pydantic. So I think Fast API is my favorite library as of now, as well as Pydantic. And on the ML side, so I've mainly worked with FastText, and anything for text classification. I think FastText is really, really good and very easy to use again. And of course, and for data crunching and for data manipulation and stuff like that, if you have like a few million records and you don't have a necessity for a big data solution like Spark, Pandas is the go-to library. So I really like Pandas. It's very comprehensive in that aspect. You can do almost everything with Pandas. So these are some of my favorite libraries in Python.
Cool. Thanks, Rucha. I think you made a very interesting point around being able to create, right? I think initially, once you experience that you can write code and then create something that you can see and use and all that, I think that's what pulls in a lot of us into programming. For me personally, I think it was Logo, where you can
Okay.
see that turtle move
Yeah.
around, and then it
Yeah.
was Visual Basic, where I think I must have created windows multiple times, where it will all
Okay.
be just button interactions, but just creating something very similar to the Windows desktop UI in Visual Basic was one of the things that pulled me into programming. Yeah, I think that was a very good point there.
Yeah.
You want to go next, Anita?
Sure. So, I mean, there are a lot of favorite libraries and tools that I have, but I'm going to pick up from something from the ops side because probably I'm biased because I started my career with the ops part. Um, so, Terraform and Ansible are my favorite stuff to go with. So, so initially, I was using Ansible to both provision and deploy systems as we were moving our ecosystem from a Chef-based setup. Even though it was more developer friendly, we were trying to simulate an immutable infrastructure with Ansible to provision the systems. So we had to, in addition to that, I had to tweak the available modules and write custom ones to achieve something basically uh, uh, search a system using tags and all those stuff. But for provision, when I started using Terraform, it actually it was much more intuitive, and all the immutable stuff it came with it. So I basically like Terraform for its simplicity and intuitiveness. I still use Ansible for configuration management, but for provisioning and orchestration, I'd love to use Terraform. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I think first time anyone starts using Terraform is like, wow, magic, right?
Yep.
If you're coming
Right.
from Chef or Ansible or something, they still have their own use cases also. But the first time that someone uses Terraform, that is like a big magic moment. Yeah, Terraform
Right.
has
So
been,
right.
yeah, awesome.
Even though I used it like 3 years back, that's still one of my favorites just because of its simplicity. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, next we'll go to Rima. Sorry if I leaked your answer a bit earlier. Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
right. Yeah, that's the no issues. So initially, like when I started off my career, I think I got hooked on to Spark. So that was like my first introduction into the big data engineering world itself. So I also found it very easy to write Spark jobs because I was introduced to Scala in my bootcamp, and I found the APIs to be very similar. So the thing was, it was easy to write those jobs, but while running them, I faced like a variety of issues, especially with memory constraints or resource constraints. So there was a lot of learning experience as part of building those or writing those jobs. And one of the great takeaways was to also document all those learnings and also do a couple of talks to share that learning to the community, right? So it was I think the best thing was the learning experience that came up as part of working with that framework. That's something that I enjoy doing. And then more recently, I mean, this is not exactly like a favorite tech or tool. It's more related to like a favorite piece of work that I worked on. I enjoyed building this knowledge graph, for the product data set that we had at Index. So the reason being that, we had all this structured data, right? And there were a lot of insights or a lot of potential that could be unlocked. And it was a lot of fun, to do a couple of data analytics tasks on top of the data to get those relations out and to visually look at those relations in a graph. And especially we found that it had a huge potential in like the search domain, especially to help out with semantic searches to improve relevance or ranking of those products. So that was one interesting piece of work that I really enjoyed building and working on. And apart from these work related pieces, I think in the tech world, one of the things that I find very interesting as part of the culture is the mentorship programs. Like especially when you try and learn something, right, and you try and mentor a folks to also pick up that technology. That culture not only just helps them learn, it also helps you improve on your knowledge and your understanding of the systems. So that is something that I also enjoy doing as part of work, a day-to-day work basis.
Yeah, great point there on the mentoring thing. I think, yeah, like people used to say, teaching is the best way to learn, and you can reinforce whatever you're learning. And from all your answers, what I'm also seeing is if we put the three of you in one team, then that team can solve any problem. Like you have such different experiences and can tackle any of it. So let's talk about the other interesting thing around what was your biggest tech challenge. So it could be something that you already talked about, which made you like the things that you talked about. But in many cases, the hardest problem will also leave you with a sour taste, right? So you don't want to work on it anymore at all. So it can be either of these. So whichever whichever was the most hardest thing for you. Let's start with Anita this time.
So on the challenging part, I would actually say the current work I'm doing on the HS code classification. So I mentioned this as challenging because in multiple aspects. For example, it was challenging as I had just started out on machine learning stuff. So I had to learn all the libraries and how things work, had to go a bit deep inside how things work. And another issue was we didn't have enough quality data, and the available data also was highly skewed. So the nomenclature for different countries will be entirely different. So we'll have to tailor models to each of them. Uh, that was quite challenging for us. So we generally build models, generic models till 6-digit, and then build country specific models for the full HS codes basically. So we started devising out plans as in how to make the data quality better. We started using Snorkel for data labeling. We wrote data labeling functions from all the weak supervision methods and all those things. So I find it quite challenging and interesting right now with all the models we are getting out and meeting the coverage and stuff. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, looks like you're learning a lot as well, right?
Yep. I am.
Rima, you want to go next?
Yeah. Okay. So in retrospect, this might not have been the hardest, but when I was first initially given this problem, it did, it was a little frustrating or hard to debug this. So in my initial years when I joined, so we had these product and price refresh pipelines at Index, which would occasionally like refresh the data that we crawled from the different e-commerce sites like once or twice a week. So I was given this task of actually, enriching the data with some of the additional, discontinued products or out of stock products. So I actually didn't know the systems at all because it was a complete black box for me, and I was not very familiar with a lot of technologies that was used there. Like scalding was fairly new for me. So I had to learn a lot of those systems, like at least what all the what the jobs actually did to come up with the required changes that had to be done. So sometimes it's easier when you have to debug like a system or two, but when it happens to be like a wide array of jobs and systems, right, it's a little harder to figure out where something has gone wrong. So I used to like make all these changes across various jobs, and I would wait for the end of the refresh, and none of the products would come out, the ones that I anticipated. And it would be very frustrating because the refresh would take like about a day or two to complete. And then I started being a little more iterative just to try and debug as the refresh goes on, looking at various steps in the pipeline beforehand so that we can catch those errors or issues sooner. And one of the things I had not anticipated was, while enabling the discontinued products to flow, a couple of jobs ended up failing because, the data had increased. So there was a lot of data skew that happened and things like that. So there was a lot of things that I learned as part of it, because earlier things, was a complete black box. And now I started getting more into learning about the systems in the pipeline and the jobs in the pipeline. So it was frustrating in the beginning because I was not getting the output that I had expected. But eventually, it was again a huge learning experience at the end of the day. And I mean, that is like in retrospect, even though it was hard at that time, but it was really a good learning experience. So currently, some of the things that I find hard is usually debugging asynchronous, programming. So especially working with akka actors and things like that, what usually happens is you might not really know whether a message that is being sent from one actor to the other actor is really received, or if it's lost. So it's not like in usual the way you debug with the help of just stack traces, right? So I some of the things that I learned was having extensive logging in place and extensive testing in place to debug such systems. So they were these were some of the pain points that I had faced while working with asynchronous programs.
Awesome. Richa, you want to go next?
Yeah, so I have one account of it was a bug. I mean, not exactly a bug, but it was very difficult to debug like what was going on. So we, like, as in you and I, Manoj, we only debugged it. So the issue was with the IB job. The IB job is where we like classify each of our products in the index database and tag them with the correct product type. And so what was happening with that job was that firstly there was a memory leak issue which we figured out pretty quickly, and we fixed that. But in spite of that, what was happening was on the cluster, the workers would go down and they would never come up again. And it took like a host of experiments and debugging and all sorts of things to figure out what the actual issue was. So that was one of my hardest experiences, also because I had to like pick up a lot of things along the way. I was very like I didn't know much of the ops side of things that went into in like creating these jobs. Firstly, we had to build AMIs, and we had to how those AMIs were built. Is there anything going wrong in that? And then where is it run? What kind of cluster it is run in? Because we had debugged it I mean, we used to run the job on an EMR cluster, but only on the cluster something was going wrong. If I spawned like another EC2 instance and ran the same EMI there, it would run perfectly. So that's how we figured out like what EMR is doing something differently that a normal instance doesn't do. And that's how we figured out what the actual issue was. But I mean, I remember this particular one because I had to basically learn a lot of things within that short span of time to actually get to know what was the issue there. So that was one of my hardest ones, I think.
Nice. I think the common theme amongst all the answers I've seen is that the initial learning curve was slightly scary, and then once you went over it, you were able to solve it, and then you actually liked solving the problem, right? That's the general theme across all the three of you. Cool. So let's take a step away from tech for a moment. So this is one of my more favorite questions. So what do you spend time on to get to know the three of you better? So what do you spend time on outside work and programming? What are your hobbies like? You want to start, Rucha?
Yeah, okay. So apart from work, I really like I do some bit of sketching and painting. So many of the times I spend my weekends with that. And recently I've like started doing a lot of tie and dye t-shirts. So especially during this lockdown, I have almost dyed all of my white t-shirts and shirts using the tie and dye pattern. So basically anything related to art, that's what I spend most of my time with. And also like enjoy reading. And again, I've been able to like finish a lot of books during this lockdown period. There was a Jane Austen book that I was reading since October. I could finally finish it in February.
Nice. So you should share your sketches sometime. We have never seen it.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I will.
Sure. You want to go next, Rima?
Yeah. So I mean, I have a similar interest with reading books. So I enjoy reading books in my free time. So the momentum, actually drastically reduced when I joined, the workforce and started working. But like Rucha said, even like because of the quarantine, right? I find like a little more time to start reading those books. So I've been able to finish a couple of books in my, uh, to read list, and it feels good to move those books into the read shelf on Goodreads. So yeah, and apart from that, usually catching up on some Netflix shows. Yeah.
Nice. You want to go next, Anita?
Yeah, I think I have completely different interests. But yeah, so I am actually a martial artist. So back in Chennai, I used to teach karate along with my sister and brother-in-law. So now that with all the lockdown and stuff, I'm actually practicing with my sister virtually through video calls and stuff in the weekends. And apart from that, I'm an adventure sports enthusiast. So I usually go for any trekking sort of things. Myself and my husband, we had all trekked almost 50% of the mountains in Seoul. So I'll have to wait for another year to resume trekking as of now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But with the current situation, the challenging bit is managing home and work, basically. So I find a bit of I mean, it's kind of challenging to probably cook, clean, and then work. Anyway, myself and my husband share stuff. Even then, it's taxing. So yeah, uh, hope
Yeah, I
things.
agree to that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, cool. I think to give my own personal experience on some of this, I do read a lot, and think from last year I've been trying to ramp up my reading. So, but curiously, my reading has gone down since the lockdown started. So, like January and February, I finished like 6 books, and since then, I've read one book till now. I think I'm spending a lot of time catching up on the situation and all that. I think, yeah, should get back into reading. Yeah, but yeah, interesting that you two have started reading more now.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that the amount of time we used to spend on commuting is probably
hmm.
converted into like an hour of reading every day.
Yeah, that was an interesting point for me then because I was using audiobooks. So commute time was something that I was using
Yeah,
for reading, and then gym time was something I was using for reading. So both of them have gone down. So it's going down for me. And I'm getting so I've been like a huge audiobooks fan. I'm now slightly getting the itch to start reading with Kindle or hard copies now. Probably I'll try that out to see if I can like get back into reading again now.
yeah.
Nice. So let's get into some of the more serious topics that I wanted to talk about. And so we talked about the challenges that you faced as a tech person in tech, right? But what, let's have this as an open discussion. What do you think are the biggest challenges that women in tech face? Like that is not really about tech. If, it might be about coming into tech or performing in tech and all that, right? So we know that there are a lot of challenges. So what would your biggest highlights would be?
So personally, just speaking out of personal experience, for me, when I first joined the industry, right, I felt very intimidated. I mean, CS was definitely like a degree that I had chosen out of my own interest. But coming into the industry, sometimes it is a little overwhelming because it's not what you expect and everything looks very new to you. So I mean, again, this experience might not just be gender specific. It could be to any new college graduate who's coming into the industry. So at that time, I think during the initial years or the initial months, I did find it a little overwhelming. But the plus point there was I had like a great support system and some amazing mentors who actually formed like the backbone for me. And because of which I was able to shape my career, and I'm able to come to a point where I am today because of their support. So I think one of the challenges is definitely that maybe the field might seem a little intimidating in the beginning. It could be.
I have not like firsthand faced any issues like this, but I mean, I think this might be the issue that firstly, even in college, right, engineering colleges, you see that the ratio is typically very skewed. There are always more boys than girls, and this skew gets worse with every stage, even while entering the workforce, and even after that. I mean, I see like a lot of women also drop out after a few years. I mean, I myself know a few friends from my college which have just dropped out. So whatever the reasons for that, maybe mostly they are what's going on in their personal life is what I think. So I think whatever may be happening, if this is what they want to do, if this is a career that they really want to pursue, they shouldn't give up no matter what may be happening in their personal lives, is what I feel. But yeah, I mean, firsthand, I have not really been lucky enough to not experience any such challenges in my life.
I agree with you, Richa. So this actually, in my opinion, the families also should help women to continue work. So if they have kids and all, if they have to quit the job, it should be by choice and not they should not be forced to, and
Yeah.
they should not quit out of guilt. So that's the one main thing I see.
Yeah, great points, everyone. And I've definitely myself been very inspired by the work and ownership that you three have been showing, and I'm sure a lot of young girls and women in schools and colleges can be inspired to work in tech by seeing what you folks have done, like overcoming some of the challenges, some of the things that you like, and so on, right? So, what would your advice be to such young girls and women who are in schools and colleges thinking of on the border of trying to get into programming? What would your advice be to them? You want to start, Rima, or we can also have an open discussion?
Yeah. Okay. So one thing is, don't be afraid to speak up or reach out or ask for help, because there are definitely people who are interested in guiding folks around. So speak up, ask. If you're feeling intimidated, or if at all you're thinking about getting into programming as well, right? In touch with some great mentors that can help you guide your career path as well. And if you're passionate about programming, there's definitely practice, because persistence is always the key to acquiring a new skill. So go ahead with that. And I think one learning that I had when I first started out was also I took mistakes to heart. So one of the advice from my mentors, which probably I'll also share, is it's okay to make mistakes. Don't be so hard on yourselves. And great learnings come from those failing jobs. Like I learned a lot more from pipelines that actually went red than those that went green. So it's okay. It's just essential that you learn from your mistakes and you always seek out help from folks around.
Nice. You want to go next, Anita?
Yeah,
Any other things
so
to add?
my thing it would be just to start coding something or the other. Say try automating every possible thing someone comes across to, and enjoying programming makes it more easier to actually solve more problems. Um, so even if they start with competitive programming and all those things, learn all the algorithms, data structures, efficiency, everything, and try solving real world problems. So yeah, that works. That's what will make a good engineer.
I think an additional point there would be like try to see if you can get internship positions in companies as early as possible or even often as possible if possible, right? I think that would be more around doing some real industry work rather than just focusing on theory or just competitive programming.
Yeah,
That's right. That helps with the transition also into
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah. So
Anything to add, Rucha, on this?
no, I think most of it has been touched upon.
Okay, cool. Thanks. That's all the things that I wanted to talk with you all. Hopefully, by listening to this podcast, if more women and girl developers are encouraged to come into programming, I think that would be a good enough success criteria for this. Thanks a lot, Reema, Anita, and Rucha, for taking the time and coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having
thanks
us,
for
Manoj.
having
Thank
us,
you for
Manoj.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you.
Yeah.